I'd like to welcome everybody along to this wonderful event. Oh, I can just see Barbara in the first row. Good for you.
She's glittering.
Glittering. So I'd like to acknowledge and give a heartfelt thanks to some key people who've made this event happen. First of all, Barbara McNaught and Sarah and her team at Momentum Events. Very good. They're not all here tonight, but all the dedicated staff and volunteers at the Men's Advisory Network, which is a very, very small sort of one-person office in East Perth. Thank you guys. The Honourable Helen Morton for being here, David from the Bendigo Bank, Rick Collingwood, and especially I'd like to thank Heath Black for his efforts to be here tonight. Hey folks, the reason I'm standing up here is because this issue is super serious. What are we here for tonight? Men, mental health issues, mental well-being. I'm sure a lot of you know about this, but here's a snapshot for you about what's happening in the community. We've heard Helen and David speak a bit about what's happening in the community and the government level. Well, I'm going to slap you in the face with some community stuff. I personally think that just about everybody suffers from a mental health issue. And if we all got over it and started doing something about it, maybe things would be a bit different. But the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare statistics say that 48% of men have a mental health issue. Most men don't take their health and well-being seriously. It was in the paper on the a couple of days ago in the Australian, 17% of Australian men don't even use their Medicare card. 17% of Australian men never get their Medicare card out of their wallet. I reckon a lot of us blokes think we're immortal. It won't happen to me. I know I was like that when I was young. I'm 47 now, I've grown out of that. I'd like to quote Steve Biddulph in his book that came out last year. It's called The New Manhood. He's an Australian family psychologist, written lots of books about stuff. And I quote, "Men on average live for 5 years less than women do. They also have higher death rates in every age category. Out of the top 7 causes of death in Australia, men excel in the numbers, sometimes by as much as 2 or 3 times the number of women who die of the same disease or illness or cause. Men routinely fail at close relationships. 50% of marriages break down and divorces are initiated by the woman in 4 out of 5 cases." Guess that indicates that men don't really have a clue about relationships to me. And that's not a joke. Over 90% of the acts of violence are carried out by men in the community, and 70% of the victims are men. I won't even talk about domestic violence. There's a whole other chapter. In schools, approximately 90% of children with behaviour problems are boys, and 85% of children with learning difficulties are also boys. Young men aged from 15 to 25 have 3 times the death rate of young women, and these deaths are all from preventable causes, motor vehicles and road trauma being the greatest cause. Men make up 80% of the homeless on our streets. Men make up over 90% of the jail populations. The leading cause of death among men between 15 and 44 is self-inflicted death. Mental health, physical health and mortality, men dominate in every category. Just being male is the biggest risk factor of all. End quote. If all of those men that I come across in my work, if all of those men had a voice, which I know they don't, it would be a scream of anguish. a scream of anguish. It seems to me the old Anzac bronzed Aussie digger values of sacrifice and endurance have outstayed their usefulness and their welcome. And I know because I was a soldier in the SAS for 5 years. When it costs so much in men's lives and ripples out into women's and children's lives as well, we can't afford it. There's a deep chasm between men and health services. It's not going to be filled with another billion-dollar building somewhere with multi-million-dollar equipment and staff. What's up with Aussie masculinity? Men are taught to grow up a certain way in our culture. I'm sure most of you would have heard or seen, or maybe even half of you would have experienced it, I'd say. See if any of this resonates. Man up. Stand up strong. Suppress your emotions. Be wary of other men, unless you're on the same team as them. And for God's sake, whatever you do not bloody well cry. Isolation, competition and homophobia are crippling us men. Crippling us men. Ridicule and shame and ridiculing and shaming of young boys into becoming man machines and work robots, it's the opposite of what we want men to be like if we want them to be mentally healthy and well. How can we expect to treat boys from a young age a certain way and then they get to middle age and then we expect them to be different? Yes, we are training boys to turn into men who suffer and die early deaths. I haven't even seen Heath tonight. Heath Black, where are you, man? Whereabouts? Oh yeah, good. Man, I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. If more blokes did what Heath's doing tonight, and this has all just come about in the last several weeks over a couple of phone calls, if more blokes came out and got honest and real about this stuff, we wouldn't need to have government departments run around trying to rescue everybody. Now, there's some good stuff happening in recent times to indicate that some of us are getting the message. Some of these things have been mentioned here tonight by Helen Morton. WA Mental Health Commission, WA Suicide Prevention Strategy, Injury Control Council of WA, etc., etc. These are all great steps and are to be applauded and grown and recognised. But I represent the Men's Advisory Network, which is a bunch of mostly volunteers doing what we can to improve the health and well-being of boys and men in this state. We exist to straddle the enormous gap between those statistics I mentioned and the too few services, groups, assistance and resources available to really help men and boys. I know of many grassroots, community-based groups of men who are making a stand for the benefit of all men. We are developing a culture of men who can help themselves and help other men and boys to grow and be well, doing it locally and within their families. If we help our boys to grow into healthy, balanced, connected and caring men, helping them to become more aware of these issues and pitfalls, helping them to become less stressed, or helping them to be less stressed and end up seeking solace in beer, drugs, or even worse, knocking themselves off. Help older men to realise their wisdom and eldership, the capacity they have to bless and honour a young man, indeed many younger men. Then, our relationships, our families, our workplaces and our communities will begin to flourish in new and amazing ways. The benefits will ripple out for everybody to notice, especially the women and children who really deserve to have the best of their men. Don't you agree? I hope to meet you and talk about ways we can work together on this soon. There's 450 people in the room. I'm going to be busy tonight, I hope. Thanks so much for your willingness and your generosity. I hope you enjoy your night. I'm so looking forward to hearing Heath speak. It's a night of celebration. Thank you so much.